Welcome to Spotlight on Lower Merion. I'm your host, Mike McKeon. We have a very special show today to talk about our military veterans, and we're also going to discuss the Ardmore Memorial Day Parade. So with me is a special guest, my father, Barry McKeon, who's also a Vietnam combat veteran. So Barry, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And Barry served in the U.S. Army in Vietnam from September 1969 until June 1970. And I know you appeared last year for a show and talked about some of your experiences. So we wanted to kind of cover a little different area too. So what was it like the first time flying into Vietnam?
Well, we're flying in, it's about a 22-hour flight from, we would leave Travis Air Force Base, which is Northern California, not far from Oakland Army Base, where we originally reported before we went over. So when you were sent to Travis, you would get your jungle fatigue, so there was no question of where you were going. And you get on an airliner that was actually a commercial airliner with regular stewardesses and the whole thing, all GIs. And I don't know what time at night we got on, it didn't matter. And you'll take off from Travis in your new jungle fatigues, and I have two stops. The first stop was in Alaska, but it was during the dark time in Alaska, so it could have been the middle of the day, but it was all night dark. We all have to get off for about 30 minutes, and then you get back on again. I don't know why. I guess they cleaned the plane or whatever. And then the next stop was Japan. We stopped at our base in Japan, and then you got a new crew of stewardesses, and I always felt that their look was a little different, because after that the next stop was what they called Tan Son Nhut Air Base. That's Saigon. So as you get closer to it, the pilot's like, well, getting ready for landing, and like, I'm not so sure we like this. You look out your window as you're flying in towards Tan Son Nhut, which is outside of Saigon, and you can see action. You can actually see pink smoke. That's what they'd pop when they were either looking to rescue casualties or locations. And I'm thinking, there's a war going on not that far below us, and are we safe in this plane?
You're coming in, it's a Continental Airlines
we're
commercial
coming in
plane.
as if we're like landing in is this a vacation? No. So you'd see it, and then no plane was ever hit or anything like that, so it was, I guess, safe. But obviously when they're circling, they're 30, 40 miles outside of Saigon, and you look down and you can see, as you get closer to the ground, action. So that's your first clue.
And then you're in country, and you were in the 1st Cavalry 34th IPST, and you were a scout dog handler.
It was actually infantry platoon scout dog.
Yeah. Okay. And so you had a scout dog, Max, who's a
Yes.
100-pound German Shepherd.
Yes, that's about, yes.
And Max had been there a couple years before you, right?
I was his third handler. Max came over, let's see, I'm 69, so since 67, when the early part of the war for scout dog handlers.
And then your first, the base you started out at is Benoit. That's a rear base, right?
Yeah, Benoit had been a regular base, but as the war progressed and we moved to push the enemy further and further away, especially after the Tet Offensive in 68, Benoit became what was a large base with both Army and Air Force, and it was relatively safe. It was well defended, and the enemy was a good distance away before they could do damage. You'd still get rocket attacks and so forth. Nothing was completely safe.
But from Benoit, you'd go to the forward base at Quan Loy, right?
They kept our dog teams there, and then they moved us as the war moved towards the Cambodian border. So about 60 miles northwest of Benoit was our base, which was called Quan Loy. And then from there, you even went out further to fire bases and then out to your units in the field.
And Quan Loy was operating as a rubber plantation at the same time?
Yes. It was really a French-owned estate that the Army took over. He kept his mansion and swimming pool and a couple of other things. His kennels, he had all these kennels which were perfect for us, so we took over the kennels. And they also, the airfield was his former 9-hole golf course. So that's where all your choppers and your C-130s, planes like that were stored. So it's a rather big base and a favorite target.
So yes, you've got a large forward base, and then the Frenchman who had this plantation, he's still living there with his mansion and his pool.
Within it. Not only that, there was a Vietnamese village within the base, which was really kind of surprising, but after a while you got used to everything.
And the guy that owned the plantation, he miraculously was never hit by anything,
He
right?
seemed to be able to move rather freely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you get into these fire bases, and then from there you have your missions in the field. Your first mission, how did you get out of that first mission? I think you told me you had an issue, right, getting on the helicopter at the end?
Well, when we finished the mission, your missions typically for dog handlers were about 3 nights and 4 days, largely due to the weather, the heat, and the wear and tear on the dog. That's the only reason you went back in. So we completed our mission, and then it was my first mission, and I was out with a shotgun, and we were separated. So he
And we see the shotgun's a guy you're out
yeah,
with.
shotgun is what we call he's your veteran dog handler that's supposed to guide you and help you out on your mission, your first mission. And we were separated at the end, and the chopper that would, the Huey chopper that would take us back in, so I wasn't even aware of it. He was already on the chopper, and the CEO of the company, the captain, came to me and said, if you're supposed to be on that chopper. So I left where the platoon was. Now remember, we're out in the jungle. So you go, and everything's in metric in the Army. So you go a few meters, a few yards, whatever, and you realize you've left your unit, and where are you going? There's this trail here, and you can't really see far ahead. And I'm thinking, where is the chopper? And fortunately, the dog, Max has been around for 3 or 4 years. Your reason you use German Shepherds is because of their sense of smell and hearing. So he could hear the chopper, and he knew what to do. So I followed the dog right to the chopper. We got on just as he was leaving, because they don't hang around. So it was a little learning to move quickly,
Right.
and be a little lucky.
Now, and talk about moving quickly too. You saw Bob Hope. He did a USO tour out there, right? And you had to get out. You got to his show in the Deuce and a Half trucks.
Right. What we did is we went out. We left Benoit to go to a place called Cu-Chi, and that's where Bob Hope was, Connie Stevens, and several other entertainers. And we took a convoy. The lead was a machine gun mounted truck, and then I was the first truck. I'm the driver going up. I don't know how far it was. It was at least a couple hours of driving through the countryside of Vietnam, getting to see what else was out there, and hoping that we're going in the right direction. We assumed the area was secure because here's 10 convoys of GIs, and we're easy targets if somebody's watching us. And we were alerted along the way if we did see what we call what looked like Viet Cong in black pajamas, if they had this big orange patch, they were really on our side. They were a local militia that was called CIDGs, or Civilian Irregular Defense Groups. The Army was notorious for using synonyms like that. We did pass some, and I just thought, well, I hope I hope they're on our side. Fortunately, they were waving to us. So I drove up, and we saw the show. And it was a couple of hours, and then as we went back, the captain, it was a lead jeep, said, we want to get back before it's dark, so we are moving. You don't stop for anything. I had driven out, and Talati, my partner, he was shotgun. We were really, and when I say shotgun in the jeep, in the truck, I mean, you had an M16 on lock and load hanging out the window. Okay, so you really were shotgun. So I was the shotgun on the way back. Talati was the lead driver, and we just could kind of see the sun settling as we moved. We kept thinking, I kind of hope the daylight stays a little longer. And just as we pulled into Benoit, it was dark. But we made it without a problem, but we moved.
Yeah. Now after you were home, I think you told me you had a grandmom came up to you, so your mother afterwards, and was asking you what's incoming, because she said you were talking about it like trying to defend Firebase Francis in your sleep, basically, right?
Yeah. When I came home, like a lot of us, we just wanted to forget about the Army, Vietnam. We were finally free. We were done, and I didn't think anything of it. My parents and we never discussed anything about the war. And but what happened is at night you have a reoccurrence, and I had one time I think I woke up and I was going through my closet. It's like 5 in the morning, and my mother gets out of bed. What's going on? I said, well, I've got a mission. I'm looking for some stuff. And she said, no, you're home. Oh, I went back to bed. I have no recollection of it. And then when I'm maybe a month later or something, I'm having breakfast, my mother said, what's incoming? And I said, that's an Army term, knowing well what it was. And Then she said, "What happened at Firebase Francis?" And I almost, like, whoa, what's going on here? Because that was a base that we weren't really attacked, but I was put on position in there, and I was handling an M60 machine gun on up all night, and we had a lot of artillery going out. There was a lot of little action, though the base wasn't under any serious attack at the moment, but just all the stuff that was going on. So I must have been mumbling something in my sleep that they heard. After that, I didn't really know of any other incidences. So it just shows that you just can't sometimes get away from it.
And I think, you were telling me too, you'd write these letters to home to grandma and grandpa about what was going on, your parents about what was going on, and they didn't talk to you much about the war, but then after you were home for a while, you found a map that they were using to kind of track where you were, right?
Yes, that's the map right here that I've discovered years later, because like I say, my letters at home, I never talked about combat missions. All my pictures at home would be of just the GIs in the rear, not of any combat type things. And so we kept that out of the conversation and left it that way. So I just didn't know what they knew and what they didn't know, because when you're thinking about it, your parents are worried every day. I know where I am.
Right.
They don't know. We're across the international date line, so we're about 24 hours in time apart. So they don't know, and this is true with all parents of soldiers that were serving there or anywhere in combat. They worry all the time.
Yeah.
And whereas at least for me, I knew when to worry, when not to worry.
Now, last question before we take our break. We say you know where you were. Sometimes you were in Cambodia, sometimes you weren't, right? How would you ever know if you were?
We operated near the Cambodian border. Quan Loy, everything was measured. A click was 1 mile, so we were maybe, I'm going to say, 20 clicks or so, 20 miles from the Cambodian border. I'm just guessing, because the borders vary too. And out on the missions, you went from Quan Loy, then you went out to a fire base that was further out, and then for the fire base, you joined a unit that was even further out. So where we were at times, we didn't really know. We had what we called local guys. They were called Kit Carson Scouts, and they were either defectors from the Viet Cong or locals that we hired to guide us through it. We happened to have a Cambodian that was leading us, and he's the one that told us we were in Cambodia on one mission. Now, there was no apparent difference.
Right.
It was still the jungle. It looked all the same to us, but it was not part of the full invasion that would take place in June of the
1970 at Cambodia.
When we really launched an invasion.
Thank you very much for going through all this stuff. We're through segment 1 now, but we're going to take a quick break. Please, everybody, stick around, and we'll be back soon. Hi, and welcome back to Spotlight on Lower Merion. I'm your host, Mike McKeon, and we're here with Vietnam veteran Barry McKeon. We're talking Vietnam War and also Ardmore's Memorial Day Parade. So, Barry, I just want to ask you one more question about your time in Vietnam. You mentioned during the break a situation where basically the best shot you ever took was the shot you didn't take, right?
Yes. It was always danger of friendly fire. You're in the jungle, and it's very easy for one squad to get separated from another squad. And where is everybody? And in this particular incident, we had an explosion, and we had already had a firefight the night before. And after the explosion, we just took positions. And mine, I remember I had the lead position for anybody coming up towards us. And I was pretty well covered. And I could hear the footsteps, and I thought, well, this is an enemy soldier. He's going to be taking his last steps pretty soon. And I thought, you know what? He seems to be making too much noise. And the more noise he made, the more I thought he's one of us. And sure enough, I held back, and the guy turns the corner, and a blonde-haired GI looked at me with a grin on his face, and I just waved him in. And I thought, well, it wasn't that close, but that could happen, and it happened a lot, unfortunately. Friendly fire, that could be just as almost as you had to be careful there as you were of the enemy. So, fortunately, I didn't shoot him.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for going through some of your experiences. And what we're going to talk about now is a little more Lower Merion and the Memorial Day Parade. Now, the Leon Spencer Reed Post, American Legion 547. We had a couple guests we were hoping could make it today, and unfortunately they couldn't make it. But I'd just like to speak on their behalf a little bit. I can't speak as well as they can, obviously, on it. But the post is located at 233 Simpson Road. It was chartered in 1932, also with the Ladies Auxiliary, which was formed about the same time. And it's named after the first black man from the main line who was killed in World War I. That was Leon Spencer Reed. And that has become, over time, really the backbone of the Memorial Day Parade. And there's a long history there of African Americans who contributed in various wars and also to the defense of the country. Last year we talked about Lieutenant Paul Short, who was killed in Vietnam, and there was a street named after him. But also the Tuskegee Airmen, who over 900 of them flew these fighter escort missions for the bombers in World War II. Two individuals in particular with very local roots. Chief Anderson was a Bryn Mawr resident. He was born in 1907. He attended the Bryn Mawr Grammar School and was interested in flying at an early age. Of course, he dealt with racism and segregation in the area. He was denied flying lessons, so he taught himself how to fly by reading books, and the community actually helped him purchase an airplane. He was an instructor at Howard, recruited to Tuskegee, and at that point he flew Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of then President FDR. A very high-profile situation, and that really got the Tuskegee Air Program literally off the ground. And he's often referred to as the father of black aviation. Another individual, Roscoe Coach Draper, who was born in Haverford in 1919, grew up in Haverford and Bryn Mawr, graduated with honors from Haverford High School, and he was one of the first 10 instructors to go to Tuskegee for advanced flight training, and he was nicknamed Coach by this Chief Anderson. Chief Anderson passed away in 1996 at age 89, but Mr. Draper, I believe, will be turning 104 in May of 2023. Did you say you met him a little bit growing up? Or?
I think he was involved with Narberth basketball when I was in high school, and we used to go to the games every night, and he was coach of one of the teams.
And you were not one of the local basketball stars?
I wasn't.
No.
I didn't make the team. No. He was he had a very good judge of talent.
Right.
So I think he had a very good team too.
Lower Merion's got a number of Memorial Day events. Belmont Hills, the American Legion Post 857, usually hosts a service, and that's in honor of the 16 Belmont Hills residents who passed away during World War I and World War II. I don't know if they're doing an event this year because the Post unfortunately closed. Gladwin and Narberth also do events. But the big event here for us, May 29th, 2023, is going to be the Memorial Day Parade in Ardmore. So what can you tell us about that?
Well, we've been holding it every year since 1947. Originally we had the VFW post in Ardmore and another American Legion post that was tied into it, so we had three in our heyday. But over the years, as the older veterans have died off and the younger veterans have scattered, the only post that's really active at the moment is Spencer Reed. We start off about 10:30 on Greenfield Avenue. We've done that for years, and march all the way down Lancaster Avenue to the intersection with Argyle, right at St. Coleman's Church, and then we go down Argyle to St. Paul's Cemetery, the oldest cemetery in the general area. They go back to pre-revolutionary days. You have soldiers buried there from the French and Indian War. So St. Paul's has really representatives of every war buried in that cemetery. So it's very historical, and they let us use this area there to complete to have the final service and the flag raising, honoring the veterans that have passed away.
So if somebody wanted to watch the parade, are there good places to watch them? Where should they go for it?
Well, you have anywhere along Lancaster Avenue. Now in front of the Township Building, you also have the Merion Concert Band playing. So that's an area where a lot of people like to congregate because they play a lot of patriotic songs and music, and it's very good. So sometimes you can kind of follow the parade on foot and go from all along Lancaster Avenue down there, and then all the way to the cemetery from there. So anywhere along there is generally probably a pretty good spot to watch and enjoy the parade and observe it and music at all.
And in terms of participants, we have local veterans, so, such as you, the Leon Spencer Reed Post veterans, Leon Spencer Reed Post Color Guard and Auxiliary, fire trucks, police, ambulance, sponsors, Ardmore Business. There's also some commissioners that attend the parades.
That's true.
I could tell you from my experience there, what I like to do is if I'm in a truck there, I like to get a flag so I can wave it, because I think it's very awkward for me if I'm just kind of like waving or looking at people in the crowd. So the flag
that's good
to give you something
that's
to do.
Very good, yeah.
Or sometimes they give us candy to throw, but the problem is we've hit people sometimes.
Yeah, there's a little issue there.
Not as good, but it's a real privilege to be able to participate in that parade, with you.
We do is the thing we also look for, because we had a decline in the number of veterans that are able to march. We do have the fellows from Spencer Reed that come, the Honor Guard, thankfully, and then myself and a fellow named Joe Falcone. Joe served not in Vietnam, but in the Dominican Republic. It's a little known it wasn't really a war, but it was a 6-month campaign to prevent Castro at that time from setting up a communist government in Santo Domingo.
And that was going basically the same time as the Vietnam War,
that
right?
occurred around 1965. So it was about a 6-month effort where U.S. forces were there supporting the Dominican side that did not want the communist takeover. So Joe was involved in that campaign. So he's been marching with us for years. We've had John Mulhern. Mulhern's been a Navy commander, and he's retiring from the marching side, but he continues to be our master of ceremonies at the cemetery. And then we've had over the years other veterans that have marched. Last year a woman joined us that was a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and hope she can be back maybe. So we're also looking for anybody that served in any capacity. It doesn't have to be a combat veteran at all. If you served in the National Guard, regular Army, you're fine and welcome to please come out and join.
And if someone wants to get involved, there's someone they should reach out to? What's the best way to get involved in the parade?
The best way to do it is just to show up at Greenfield Avenue at 10:30. We do have a meeting next week, and there are Jody Jody Kelly's probably the easiest one to contact at the township. I imagine she's very, very busy, but really it's the easiest thing is just show up. If you have your uniform on, fine. If not, that's not a problem. Some guys keep their uniforms. Some of them, like me, don't fit in them anymore. So, but you wear some insignia.
Yeah, I think that's important because when I helped organize a Bala Kinwood's 4th of July event about 6-7 years ago now, and no matter how much you do to organize it, once that day comes, it's kind of like a free-for-all in a lot of ways.
Yes, that's the way ours is.
Yeah. So it's well organized, but then it's 10:30 and it's showtime and anything can happen.
You have your fire companies that want to do it their way, and you let them. Okay, fine. The ladies' auxiliary, and it ties in with the Spencer Reed, so they like to be close, and that's fine. Then your various participants that want to be part of the parades, various groups, they're in there in their trucks and whatever vehicles, they're in there as well.
And if somebody wants to sponsor the parade or donate or contribute, what can they do for that?
Well, that's always looking forward to that. That is handled by Jody Kelly at the township, and the best thing to do is just to probably contact her on an address if you wanted to send contributions.
And I do know Spencer Reed also, that you can contribute directly to Spencer Reed. It's Post 547 American Legion, Attention Memorial Day Committee, 233 Simpson Road, Ardmore, PA 19003.
Right, because they also have an event after the parade for the kids and everything.
And new this year, I believe, we're going to have an LMTV event too, where some of the famous talking heads on LMTV will be following the parade and doing some interviewing.
Yeah, it's almost like having national coverage.
Yeah,
so.
It doesn't get any better than that.
Yes.
And what about the 3 wreaths that get laid at St. Paul's? What's the background on that?
They're to honor various. One's to honor the veterans that are serving now, those that have served before, and I think there's 3, and I forget the exact range of on each detail, but there's 3 wreaths we laid honor respective memorial observation.
Right, and there's no gun shooting, right? But there could be a cannon this year.
We have a little Civil War cannon that goes off. We used to have rifles, but those are long gone. So this has been replaced by this, and sometimes we do get a continental group that'll come and fire a salute, and they could. I'm not sure whether we have one this year or not, but we always have at least something anyway. We have a bugler, and that's really the most important thing, is to have the bugler for taps as we're doing the service.
And the cannon's that's like a little thing that would have been on a boat to do signals, right, to another boat.
Even a very small boat.
Very small. Yes. All right, well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Barry, thank you very much for coming out. This has been a great experience. So thank you.
Thank you.